We are now having our first session, Play to Work, telling stories through drones and 360 degrees videos. So we're talking about Buzzfeed's Open Lab in San Francisco. It's a wonderful organization that is bringing together experts from various backgrounds for a one-year fellowship, artists as well as journalists, hardware and software developers. And Ben Kreimer is one of them. I'm very happy to have you here now. He will now share how 360-degree video creates immersive journalism and how drones can be effectively used not just for aerial video, rather than for multimedia storytelling. And I'm just coming back to the sentence of Duncan Edwards. He said, content, everything starts with content. So, but how do you create and deliver it? We are very happy to have your presentation now for a quarter of an hour, and then I'm very happy to have your questions. Please, your questions at first, and then I go for mine. The stage is yours. Ben Kreimer.
Hello. So I'm a journalism technologist currently working with Buzzfeed at their new Open Lab based in San Francisco. And basically the Open Lab is Buzzfeed's take on an R&D lab, but it's based on a fellowship. It's based on fellowship. So we have one-year fellows who come in. I was actually the first fellow who came in at the end of last summer. And there are currently 6 of us working on a variety of different projects, and all of which are related to journalism, technology, and the arts. Before coming to Buzzfeed, I was working with the Drone Journalism Lab and African Skycam, and I'm still an advisor for both projects. So interested in drone journalism primarily and doing projects overseas. So I'm really interested in the future of storytelling, spatial storytelling, immersive storytelling, with drones, 3D environments, reconstructions, 360 video, mobile devices, and virtual reality. And there's a lot of interplay between these different tools and methods of storytelling. And in the process of exploring these tools up until recently, when I joined Buzzfeed, I'd been working with organizations around the world, Vice, The Star in Kenya, working with wildlife conservancies, doing sort of drone videography, drone safari, PR work, the Times of India, Tao Center for Digital Journalism at Columbia. So basically exploring new ways of using drones and other technologies for storytelling. So video 1. Maybe. Yeah, no, I don't have the remote control now. Okay. Okay.
You can give us a bit of a background in the meantime. We are working on it.
Yeah. So what we're about to see, if the video will pull up, is a brief look at some of these projects, and basically a look at some of the early drone journalism projects that we were doing with the Drone Journalism Lab and with African Skycam. So basically, drones, commercial, consumer-based drones first came out in late 2011, and we instantly got to work putting them to use for storytelling. So doing projects around East Africa, rally racing, doing aerial video work for the Times of India, a football tournament in India, filming around the continent of Africa, the Serengeti, the Great Migration, Victoria Falls before that. Basically figuring out how can we use drones, what's it like to work in the field with this emerging technology, what kind of problems do we have? And early on, we had a lot of issues. Just getting the equipment to work reliably in the field was a big enough challenge. But we had some great success. Interesting interactions with wildlife. So not only figuring out how does the technology work, but also what kinds of surprises come along with using these new tools. And those are some of my favorite shots over the recent years. one project that sort of changed the focus of what I was doing came around the time I did this in late 2014, a story about the Dandora landfill in Nairobi. And I was brought in to work with a reporter who at the time was with Vice, and we were doing a documentary about people who survive off of the trash in this landfill. And so the aerial perspective was a great way to capture the space of Dandora. Now, I took that and then went a step further and created a 3D reconstruction of the landfill, which is what this is right here. This is a video walkthrough, basically. This is Dandora. This is Dandora in 3D. It's hosted on Sketchfab, which is kind of like the YouTube for 3D models, for 3D reconstructions. So I've been playing around with 3D modeling using drones as the aerial platform for capturing the images that go into this model. So this, what you see here, is made up of about 500 still photographs taken by a drone, but then processed so that we have a 3D reconstruction of the space. And along these lines, you can do data journalism as well. So we figured out that, well, the size of the landfill, this is only 2/3 of the dump, but this is 65 acres. Most stories up until this point in time had quoted, or had been who we could quote as saying the landfill is 33 acres in area. Well, it's actually much larger than a lot of people thought. The volume of trash is about 3 times what most people thought. So we were able to do some interesting data journalism as well as the 3D reconstruction. I've been using off-the-shelf hardware, the DJI Phantom series from the beginning of 1, 2, and now 3. So nothing really that hard to get your hands on. This here is a screen grab of a 3D reconstruction, just illustrating what basically goes into the process, which is, this is a mosaic in Turkey, and you have these blue squares over the mosaic, and those are each photographs taken by the drone. And so basically in the software, whatever piece of software you use, it stitches the images together in such a way that it's able to create depth based on the overlap that all these images have. And it's a somewhat complex process that's been made very, very easy using software currently available. This is just one of the screenshots of this mosaic. But you can also you can create a 3D reconstruction of anything like this water bottle. So this is the head of Medusa that I made just with a point-and-shoot camera, but same process as with the drone photography. This is a church in Ethiopia using Autodesk Memento as a free piece of software for doing 3D reconstructions, whether it's drone-based, spatial, or just object-based reconstructions. And Autodesk 123D Catch on your phone for doing very mobile productions, 3D productions. So why 3D reconstructions? These are real spaces. These are real places that I've digitally reconstructed. There's no artistic interpretation. I go in, I take photographs, and I create a reconstruction of that space. So I'm able to, in some sense, put people into a real space that actually exists without any interpretation on my part. And also it encourages interaction and exploration because now the user can actually explore the space and they're not just watching a video that I shot, say, from a drone flying around the landfill. Now you can actually fly yourself around the landfill. 360 video came about for me last summer. And I got excited after seeing an Al Jazeera piece where they took the viewer, me, everybody else, through the Hajj experience. And since then, it's really exploded. I've been interested in using drones for 360 video because of the way that a drone can move through space. One of my first projects was, again, trying to keep the equipment accessible and low cost, was to use a DJI Phantom, in this case a DJI Phantom 2, with 2 GoPro cameras with modified aftermarket lenses. And the idea was, with this, using 2 GoPro cameras, it's cheap. And it was kind of a quality compromise in terms of the output, the video output, which I'll get to in a moment. But making this system, I could fly these cameras on a drone, I could produce decent quality video, and at a decent, relatively easy on the wallet price, which also made it easier to fly these cameras around because we weren't so worried about crashing in the unlikely event that that would happen, which it does. These are drones, and they're not perfect yet. But if we were to lose our gear, it's not as big of a deal as if we had, say, 6 GoPros hanging beneath a larger drone. Our first project was the Valley Fire project with Buzzfeed. And let's see. Okay, there's video number, was it 3, I believe? Yeah. So the Valley Fire project we did last October around a large forest fire that took place north of the Bay Area. And the project was really an experiment, literally playing around with 360 cameras that were available at the time. We had a Ricoh Theta S. That's what shot this footage. We weren't very happy with the Theta, so we also had my GoPros along, and we were flying these rigs on a drone, as you can see. We figured this was a great opportunity to use these new tools for storytelling because of the spatial nature of this forest fire. 76,000 acres burned. It was a huge catastrophe for this small area in California. And we interviewed a woman, Pat Hand, who lost her house. In this case here, she's holding a 360 camera. We were trying to avoid using tripods because we didn't like the feel of tripod captured 360 video. Although it is extremely stable, you also kind of become a lamp or a tree in a scene. And we wanted more movement, we wanted more action, we wanted to connect the viewer to Pat Hand, so we had her hold the camera. We had the drones flying through scenes, going places where we could not actually walk because it was too dangerous. This here was shot with the GoPro as the alternative to the Theta. So we're no longer using Ricoh Thetas. We're primarily using these 2 dual GoPro systems. Okay, so just a quick comparison, Ricoh Theta S, how much this gear costs. And then on the top, we have the GoPros. So as a compromise, the GoPros have been working well. Been changing up the way that the drone carries the GoPro, so now the legs no longer appear in the shot. And this here is in the middle we have a kit, or at least the camera portion of a kit that's been going around to Buzzfeed reporters. This was recently in Guantanamo Bay for a story. This is what Buzzfeed reporters are using instead of a Ricoh Theta S, instead of a 6 GoPro rig, because it's simple to use. We have a Zoom H2N on the top, which is a microphone that can capture 360 degrees of audio. Really on a flat plane, it doesn't capture up or down, sounds coming up from up or down so well, but it works pretty well for a low-cost, easy-to-use rig. There's also now the Kodak SP364K, which we've begun using as well, which is basically like the GoPros, except you don't have to change out the lenses. So they're a little bit easier to get started working with because you can just pull them out of the box, put them in their mount, and get to work. But the advantage to using the GoPros is the simplicity. The 2 cameras are gen-locked together, so they are perfectly synced. So basically, we have 2 cameras that operate as one. Power on one camera, they both come on. Press record on one camera, they both start recording. So this is very easy for the reporter who's not too familiar with this technology and with this kind of storytelling. So we really want to give these tools to people who maybe don't know how to use them or haven't used them before or are interested in this form of storytelling and just want to jump right in. So this is an easy way to get started. And everything here is 3D printed as far as the GoPro housings go. And as you can see, actually both GoPros they're locked in with plastic cases with plastic casings that you can remove with a pen so that you can pull them out if needed to change batteries. But for the most part, you can just grab and go. And there's the whole kit that reporters have been taking out with them. And all of this is online. You can't see the link so well in blue, but at the end, all this is online. I'll share the link to all these slides. Frugal innovation, using foam and zip ties to attach GoPros to a drone. It actually works quite well. Doing this, the drone actually disappears, and I'll show a clip of this in a moment. More experimentation, putting GoPros, or in this case, the Kodak cameras on your head. The idea being, can we capture 360 immersive video from the perspective of a human? So you can basically inhabit somebody's headspace, and you can then watch video where you're walking around where they walk. So that would be video 4. Yeah. Maybe not.
And
if you could jump to the final slide, that would be fine.
And still search for the video, please.
Yeah, this controller is not working. So if you can just jump to the PowerPoint's final slide, that'd be great. Okay. Or we can start here, which is almost at the end. Why 360 video? Again, interaction, engagement. The consumer is no longer just a consumer of what the producer has decided. Now you can look around, you have more freedom to explore. Transparent storytelling. The reporters can remain in the shot so that you can see what it's like for the reporters to engage with the people that they are reporting about, who they're interviewing. So it adds possibilities for transparency. And really, now's the time to get started with 360. A lot of companies are doing this already. Ride the novelty wave, but really ask, why are we doing this project in 360 if that's what you decide to do? Publish in the browser. I'm opposed to apps because it requires the user to download an app, download content to the app. So in the browser, it's really easy to get started. It's really easy for consumers to access content. Use simple cameras. Using 6 or more GoPros, things get complicated fast with 6 batteries, 6 SD cards. It makes it harder to act quickly and to, at times, capture events that are going on because you'll miss it because you're messing with your cameras. They are a challenge to use. We've been using them as well. Put cameras in interesting places, not just on tripods. Again, immersion. What can we add to add to a story based on where the camera goes? So playing around with that, I think, is really important right now, especially as the technology is so new. And focusing on mobile devices. Few people have VR headsets. Everybody, well, a lot of people have mobile devices. So really targeting that market. And then also, it allows you to be, there's more flexibility if you're producing from mobile devices. You can get away with things. Like if you don't have perfectly smooth video, maybe you're using a drone. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. Because of the mobile device, you won't get sick like you will when wearing a VR headset. So you can get away things also by going with mobile devices while reaching more people. Thank you. And like I said, the presentation and slides, as well as the video content, the 3D content, is all available there, benkreimer.com/DIS2016.
Thank you very much, Ben. And you get the video there. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have 3 more minutes for some questions of you. Any of you first? Please, can you introduce yourself quickly? Can you bring the mic? Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm Tanya Aitamurta. I'm from Brown Institute for Media Innovation at Stanford University. So I'm also from the Bay Area, just like Ben. I have a question about interaction and engagement, because you said that 360 video, there's an echo, sorry about that. The 360 video gives more possibility and freedom for the viewer. But so how do you think about the next step from that? Like, because now we can just look around basically. How about if you could click on the video and maybe use some CG in the 360 video? Have you seen good examples about that? And would you be interested in working on projects like that yourself?
Yeah, so I've seen I've seen examples of that, but it's more in the VR goggle sphere. I think there's a lot that can be done in that regard, and I think that's what I'm interested in exploring more of, is incorporating exactly those elements. Because when working with these tools, really, 360 video is not quite virtual reality, but you can start bringing in virtual reality elements, like adding CG elements. There's the immersive sound aspect, which I didn't touch on, which will add a lot to either a 360 experience or a VR experience. But in short, yes, there's so much that can be done in that sphere that there's a lot of playing. And I think there's an extremely deep amount of, there's so much potential there. And we've just begun to explore. Everybody has.
Anybody else of your part? If not, I have a question. Talking legal conditions. As far as I know, in India and Kenya, for example, consumers are not allowed to fly drones at all. They are banned. And for example, in America, you have to have this exemption 333. Only very, very few people are allowed to go below, I think, 600 meters. What do you think is going to change in order to use that more profoundly and more broadly in the future?
Everything will be regulated at some point. I mean, the projects that I did in India and Kenya were done before the bans went into place. So since those bans were put in, I've basically been shut down in those countries. Before that, too, I'd been shut down in the US, so I did not fly the drone in the Valley Fire project for that reason. But there are an increasing number of people with the 333 exemption, which is what you have to get in the US to fly drones commercially. But eventually, it's taking a lot longer than I think everybody would have hoped. There will be regulations in place that'll make it much more straightforward for people to go out and operate commercially and to do journalism work with these tools.
Asking you personally, what is your biggest expectation? Is it going into investigative work with it?
Yeah.
Is it going? So what is your real political journalistic interest behind? Is it the investigative part, or is it?
I mean, those kinds of stories are much more conducive to using these tools. You can do breaking news, you can do short turnaround stories, but it's a lot harder given the layers of technology that come together, especially right now. The workflows for working with these different kinds of content are improving. It's getting easier and faster to work with, say, 3D reconstruction or 360 video. But right now, time-wise, investigative pieces work really well. Also, I think given the possibilities for putting people in the spaces, in many cases, I think investigative pieces are conducive for, say, 3D reconstruction, where you could reconstruct a scene and then somebody can explore that. Something that I didn't show is there's the 3D models. Well, there's also a first-person view, basically a VR video game-like experience, which is also on my website link. So basically, you can walk around and jump around these environments that were captured by a drone.
Any other question from you? If not, I have a last one. Robert, don't you have one? You're a tech journalist too. You're incredibly advanced in knowledge. Come on, share your knowledge.
So, I'm Robert Hernandez, digital journalism professor at USC, also a VR nerd. There's a discussion about whether or not you should Photoshop and remove the drone and or the reporter when you're shooting 360. It's a question about ethics, whether or not that's okay or not. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so with the Valley Fire project, we stayed in the shot. The reporters were in the shot when we were doing the interview. I'm very much in favor of journalists staying in the shot. I think that's part of the appeal, if you ask me, when it comes to using these tools, is that transparency element. But there are some cases where I can see letting a camera run on its own where the journalists walk away. But I feel like if you're engaging with people, and that's part of the story, I don't like the idea of setting up a tripod with a camera and then having the interview subject just talk at the camera or talk at something else in that space. So I'm definitely a proponent of that level of transparency. I'm not comfortable with setting up a camera and then having the journalists walk away and hide, because that does involve some level of scripting, of setting up that scene and the actions that take place.
Very last question from my part, very quick. Privacy issues?
With 360? Okay, so, well, one example. I mentioned the Guantanamo Bay project briefly. We had a reporter go there. She had a lot of trouble with this platform, working with these cameras in that environment where the U.S. Department of Defense is very, very leery of these new technologies, partly because they do show everything. So she worked with these DoD media handlers, basically, that took her footage, her 360 footage, and they went in and they blurred out things like sniper nests. And it was a big challenge for these DoD handlers. And in the end, they actually didn't let her take her video footage with her. So we ended up with nothing. Partly, we think, because the superiors of these DoD handlers, who she had to get permission, basically, to take the final content away from Guantanamo Bay, they saw the technology and what it could do, and they were very uncomfortable with it. So yeah, you can show everything, and in certain cases, if you're reporting on sensitive areas, that can quickly become problematic, because you can't, focus on just one thing or two things. Everything appears.
Falls into play. Thank you very much, Ben. And meet him? Sorry?
Yes, and coming up this spring, I will be on the Digital Innovators tour in the Bay Area. So I'll be one of the speakers for that.
Go. Thank you very much, and meet you again on benkreimer.com/dis2016. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Big applause.